Hello people of YouTube, what's up? Dacus from Ghost AI on YouTube. Today is episode 3 of Looking Back. Today we were going to be looking back on the Nintendo Wii. So first, a little bit of backstory on the Wii. It was released in 2006 to kind of, sort of compete with the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Only the Wii was targeting a much different demographic. That is, the Wii was he's aimed more for non-gamers and families. That wanted a console they could just have in the living room, and then play games with each other with. And it was pretty successful. The Wii sold really well. Back when it was released in 2006. Yeah, it sold very well. It was a big success for Nintendo until the Wii U came along and basically he threw Nintendo and threw the Wii success down the drain. So yeah, that was kind of sad. Yeah. So let's talk about specs a little bit. So the Wii, it has a 733 MHz power PC, a processor developed by IBM, as well as a 243 MHz GPU, developed by ATI, who was later bought out by AMD. Yes. Now that's out of the way, let's look at the hardware tour, shall we? So, first off, you have the Wii branding right there. Your eject button, have a little door that has a full-size SD card slot in it, as well as the sync button. On the same general area, you have your eject button, reset, and power buttons. Now this is the only console I've seen that has a reset button. So that was interesting. So on the left side, or bottom, depending on how you have it oriented, you have what's supposed to be four rubber feet, but 2 of them are missing, as you can see. As well as this little port right here that houses your CMOS battery. Also here you have your serial number and other information, as well as a little vent. The right side, here's where things get interesting. So right here, you have 4 GameCube controller ports, as well as 2 GameCube memory card ports. So that was really interesting. Yeah, there was that's on the top. You have your Nintendo and ATI branding, along with the some super high gloss white plastic. consoles on the top or side, depending on how you have it oriented or orientated, as I like to say. Sorry. On the back, you have your I/O, which is very, very, very little I/O. You have your 12-volt AC in, AV multi-out, your aux port for the sensor bar, as well as one tiny little fan, and two USB ports. Let's move this off to the side. And there was 2 or 3 heat iterations of the Wii. There was this one. There was one that came out a year or 2 years later that had dropped the GameCube support. And then there was the Wii Mini, which not a lot of people outside of Canada and some parts of the United States knew about. And yeah, as far as I've read, it did not sell very well. Well, probably because it didn't come with any internet connectivity. So, yeah. Also, another thing about the Wii's hardware, it could only play in HD graphics. Yeah, it only had standard definition graphics, while the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 had high definition graphics. Now Nintendo made up for this by releasing some really, really good games for it that you didn't really need to have super high graphics for, like New Super Mario Bros. Wii, Mario Kart Wii, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and a bunch of other really good games. Sonic Colors was released for the Wii, which is probably my favorite Sonic game. In fact, it's the only Sonic game I've ever played. I haven't played Adventures 1 or 2, Generations, or anything like that. Actually, no. I have played Sonic Rivals, which is another good, in my opinion. So now let's talk about the controller. So, on the Xbox and PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, you had some pretty standard controllers for your time. There's another thing. Nintendo could never seem to stick with one controller design. They're always changing for every new console that came out. You had the NES, which had a big, basically a square with a D-pad, select A, B, select, and start. You had the Super Nintendo, which is more rounded and had more buttons. You had the Nintendo 64, which is just like a weird controller that the analog stick in the middle. It was weird. And the GameCube, and you had the GameCube controller, which actually looked more like a standard controller. Then you had the Wii controller, which I will get onto in a minute. And then you had the Wii U gamepad controller thing that's basically like a big 7-inch tablet with buttons around it. So let's talk about the Wii Remote, or the Wiimote, as it's more commonly called. It's comfy. It's comfy. I'll say that. Hey guys, apologies for that. The battery on my camcorder died before I got to finish my sentence. Very annoying. What was I talking about? Yes, the controller. Yeah, it's comfortable to use, relatively. It's not a super awkward shape. So yeah, let's go over the buttons. So on the bottom here, you have your Wii branding right there. Above that, you have your players. You have your LEDs to indicate which player or the controller is assigned to, much like the PlayStation 3. You have your 1 and 2 action buttons. You have your plus above that. You have a little speaker, which was very innovative for the time. The Wii had a speaker in its controller before the PlayStation 4 did, so inspiration, possibly. Anyway, above that you have your plus and minus buttons, presumably for changing the volume on the speaker. In the middle you have your home button for taking you back to the Wii menu. Above that you have a nice big A button. Above that you have your even more spongy D-pad. And finally, for the front fascia of the controller, you have a power button for controlling, for turning the controller on and for turning on the Wii. On the back, you have your trigger button. And yeah, that's basically it. Just have a trigger button. Oh yeah, on the top here you also have an IR window for communicating with it. As to actually get the Wiimote to function, you needed one. Yeah, sorry. Trying to get it wrapped. So I guess. Yeah, to get the Wii to actually function, for you to actually control it, you needed one of these, which is a little little sensor bar. It's basically, you got two IR transmitters, or IR receivers rather, right here and right here, for communicating with the IR transmitter on the remote. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot not to mention while we're on the subject of the remote. On the bottom, you have your lanyard strap and an expansion port, as well as two little prong things. Oh yeah, back here, this is not the standard battery case. As you can see, this is a aftermarket rechargeable battery. It's an aftermarket battery case, actually by Nyko. So yeah, it's interesting. But yes, you needed one of these, which came with the Wii, although you could buy aftermarket ones. Not sure how reliable those are. It required one of these little things to work, which bears a striking resemblance to the Connect port, to the Connect aux cable that I needed. Inspiration? I doubt it. Right, moving on. Yeah, it's like a sensor bar. It's got two IR receivers. You put it below your TV, and yeah, it works. It's also got a really long cable, which is nice. Just gotta wrap it back up. I'll try and do this as quickly as possible. Sorry, my singing is terrible. There. So now that's done, let us talk about peripherals and accessories you can get for the Wii, and yeah, there was a lot of them you could get. The first one we're going to touch on is the Wii Wheel, which is basically it's got no electronics, and it's basically a plastic Wii. It's a plastic wheel that, yeah, it was primarily used for Mario Kart, which was pretty innovative, I'd say. Basically, what you do is you feed the lanyard through here, and yeah, just slot the Wii remote in there just like that, and then this little raised portion corresponds with the trigger button. So yeah, just do it like that. You can access all your the buttons, and yeah, it's basically a plastic wheel. The next peripheral is a zapper, pretty much. Another plastic thing. Basically, what you do for this is it's a little bit more involved. First, what you do is you undo that little thing. You undo this. You put the Wii. You put the Wii remote in there, and then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you just put that in there. I think. I think I'm doing this wrong. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm doing it wrong, but whatever. It's the thing you put the Wii remote in. That just clamps in there. Put that in there, and yeah. It's a thing you put. Yeah, it's basically what it is. Yeah, this is primarily used for. I know Wii Sports had a sort of duck hunt style skeet shooting. He had a duck hunt style shooting mini game where you shot at clay pigeons, and then there was one where you had like a bunch of Miis, which was like the little avatars that you use for the Wii, and like this alien came down and abducted them, and you had to shoot the alien ship down to rescue the Miis. And yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you haven't played Wii Sports, you should. It's a lot of fun, I'd say. Yes. The next two are so next thing here is the nunchuck. Basically, you plug it in through the extension into the extension port. Just plug that in, and basically it's this. This is normally used in a Wii, the boxing minigame in Wii Sports, as well as Punch Out, and a couple other games require this. Basically, it can move your person around, and then these performed the D-pad, the trigger button, and the second trigger button, basically performed different actions. So there's that. Next, you have the Wii Classic controller, which is a lot more like your standard controller. In fact, here is a PlayStation 3 controller. So, there. Much more standard. See, the one thing that the Wii he did do that was really cool is virtual consoles. Virtual console. You could get like classic, basically emulators of old Nintendo games for NES, Super NES, and things like that, and then download them on the Wii from its app store of sorts, and then you could play all your retro Nintendo games and other games using this controller. That's what this is primarily for. Let's see. And one thing this reminds me of, it reminds me of a Super Nintendo controller. It reminds me of a Super Nintendo controller. Maybe that's what they were aiming for. So for this, you have your A, B, X, Y high buttons, the plus and minus buttons are now select and start, as well as the home button. You have your Not as spongy D-pad, but still pretty spongy. You have your trigger buttons, as well as your ZL and ZR action buttons. So, I do also have the Wii balance board, but it's somewhere in the dark recesses of my house, and I really, really do not feel like trying to fish it out because it's all dusty and dirty and nasty. And yeah, I really, really don't want to. So, concluding thoughts on the Wii. It was a very successful console. It did very well. No, unlike the Wii U, which came after it. God, that thing just, yeah. However, I do know that like one maybe two of my friends bought a Wii U. Why? I'm not sure, but they did. I don't know. But yeah, very successful console. It tried to focus primarily towards families and non-gamers, and frankly, it did a good job. How about that? Yeah, but sadly, this Wii, the last two consoles I showed you the last console I showed you work perfectly, but this does not work at all. It's broken, which sucks because it was awesome. Yeah. Hopefully Sony can. Damn it. Sorry. Hopefully Nintendo can get their act together, with the NX, and hopefully Nintendo can get her act together, and equally as hopefully, if that makes any sense. Yeah, equally as hopefully the NX, Nintendo gets the NX right and actually listens to their consumer base and what they want to see in the next Nintendo console. Hopefully we don't have another Wii U, which will make me sad. Because if Nintendo goes the way of Sega and Sega and Konami, that will make me and a lot of other fans of Nintendo sad. Hopefully they can get their shit together. So, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, rate, comment, and subscribe, and this has been Atticus from Ghost AI, signing off. Peace. See you guys. So, here's a fun trivia fact for you guys. If you say, hey, Wii U, over and over and over again, it sounds like a siren. See? Wii U, Wii U, Wii U. See, doesn't it sound like a siren? Doesn't it? Okay, I'll go now.